Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN Weekly for Saturday, December 5th, 2020. And our top story this week, business lessons learned and opportunities shaped by the pandemic. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Don Clayton. He's a partner with Business Advisory Solutions Group. Don, thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Jeff.
So let's jump in, because your organization surveyed its clients and really tried to get at the heart of opportunities and some lessons learned for both large and small businesses. First, what's BASG? Let's just get that out in about 30 seconds to a minute. Who is BASG? And then we can talk about the survey results.
Sure, we're a consulting firm that most of our client base is banks or financial institutions, although we do probably about 20% outside of financial institutions and other industries. We focus on two big broad brush key areas of the consulting firm. One is around governance, risk, and compliance, and the other is around business and technology alignment.
Great, thank you for that. So with that context, you went out and surveyed clients, your clients, and probably others within the financial services communities. And there are some clear lessons learned for running a business in this new normal, right? This new pandemic normal that we're all living in.
Yeah, whatever new normal really means, right? We did a couple of things. We looked at our client base and wanted to know, we asked them three critical questions, as well as our vendor base and our partners. At the onset, what happened? Where were you? What was going on in your business at that particular time? And then we kind of moved into this new normal, again, whatever that really means. And so we asked the follow-up questions of, how are you doing right now? And then the third component to it is, are you ready? There is going to be a post-pandemic period. So are you ready for that next segment of post-pandemic when your business needs to move out of this?
So that begs the question, how are clients doing? How are people in the financial services industry doing under this new regime?
Yeah, I think it first starts with the onset. Unfortunately or fortunately, not everybody was at the same starting gate, not at the same starting line. So they may have been in the middle of a merger, an acquisition, looking to introduce a new product, trying to do some expansion. They may have had lots of cash. They may have not had much cash reserves. So depending on where they were at the onset is really predicated as to where they are today in this new normal.
Have clients had to, or even people that you're talking to, and let's just not just make a client, but people in the financial services industry that you're talking to, have they had to furlough employees or reassign employees to different projects? Maybe they're putting on hold technology implementations that maybe they were thinking about or had planned to do? What has been some of the impact there?
So again, kind of going back to what the onset was when the pandemic first hit, if they had already invested in infrastructure and technology, if they had already empowered people, their employee base, if they had already adopted kind of a work from home atmosphere, if they had already, were very adaptive to change as a culture, they're doing pretty well. So they were able to make the transition into the new normal, and the new normal caused them to continue to drive forward and look at new ideas, new innovative ideas as to how to not just survive in the new normal. So again, not necessarily letting off or stopping projects, but reallocating resources or reallocating project initiatives. So they're doing pretty well. But then again, the ones that hadn't done that have not invested in infrastructure, have not been adaptive to change, and have not been people empowering or had good leadership, or not receptive to remote work in the past. They're struggling.
Yeah, I mean, it's adapt or don't survive, right? I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. Now, Don, when it comes to digital banking, you make the point in your executive summary that this is going to be, and I think we've seen this, a cashless, we talked about this in other episodes, more of a cashless society, at least for the foreseeable future. People don't want to touch each other. They don't want to touch hands. But this is really a surge that is like unlike any other surge. I mean, what can we expect going forward from a technical and technological point of view?
Yeah, so a lot of businesses are going to change. They're going to morph into something new after the post-pandemic. And what those changes are going to incur in the banking world, they've already started moving a long time ago to digital age, right? But the pandemic has caused consumers, you and I, or people that we know from a banking perspective, they can't walk into their bank. So if they're, maybe it's an elderly population, or maybe it's a population that just is, struggles with the digital age, they have to relearn this, and they had to relearn this on the fly during the pandemic side. Again, you can't physically go into a branch, so now they're starting to log on where they've never logged on before. They're starting to do online banking, and that's opening up a whole new world for the banking environment. They were already starting to go there, but now instead of trying to compete brick and mortar against a competition that's coming into your space, they are competing globally, or certainly nationally, because they can go into any market and they can start expanding their footprint because of the digital age.
And Don, is it your sense, so you deal with a lot of financial services institutions like banks, is it your sense that they are going to build a digital banking product internally, or have built a digital banking product internally? Or do they try to mesh a smaller startup, for example? We've talked about this also on the show, that maybe instead of building internally, you try to mesh something that someone else built. What's your sense from talking with your clients and prospects?
So there's three ways to attack this. You can either build it, buy it, or partner with it. And so some of the previous segments that you talked about is around fintech. So there is definitely going to be opportunities that have arisen from the pandemic. They're going to continue to move forward post-pandemic. And as an institution, you're going to have to realize, is it quicker for me to build it, quicker, cheaper, and easier for me to build it? Or should I go out and buy it because I have cash reserves and I can go out and do that and just quicker to go to market and compete? Or do I partner with somebody? And that's really going to be a personal decision based on that individual organization.
Yeah. And Don, with the digitalization and transactions comes a lot of data. Have you seen clients at least indicate a migration to, rather than just providing, for example, a banking product or products or an investment solution, now they're actually in the data management and data delivery business, and they've really had to shift to gather this information, and I'm not saying it in an onerous or invasive way, but to gather this information so that they can analyze it and then put it to good practical use for their customers.
Yeah, data analytics has been around for a long time now. More and more information, more and more data causes the need for less manual transactions and more automated transactions. So you start getting into things like artificial intelligence and business rules that create, be able to digest that amount of data and be able to spit it back out. But when you talk about data, it's not just for the analysis of data to make good business decisions, to be more customized to your client base, because as consumers, we want more and more customization to our needs and how our buying behaviors and what our financial interests are. But it's also, don't forget about the security of data. We've learned this, recently through a November event that there's security of data or security of information is going to be paramount, critical going forward too, and certainly banks have to pay close attention to that.
Don, last question. We just had Small Business Saturday a week ago around the nation, really trying to help smaller businesses. Have you seen differences within your clients, those you surveyed, between the response from the smaller businesses? I don't know if you presumably may have some clients that have under 1,000 employees, maybe they have 100 employees, but have you seen maybe some differences there in terms of how some of the smaller businesses have adapted versus some of the larger businesses? Because obviously 50% of Americans are employed by small businesses in this country.
So a few thoughts on that. So when we, our survey didn't just go into banking or financial institutions, but it also went into our community as well, and looking at some of the small businesses, because true to form, and we work with anywhere from small businesses to Fortune 500 companies. But what we found is a few things. One is it started off with a sense of obligation, I think, as community involved individuals, that we want to help our local businesses. So we started patronizing our local businesses and so forth. And what we've identified as consumers is that there's a gap there. There might be gosh, I wish that, there was a certain store or restaurant that delivered to my area. In my own community, we did. My neighborhood is a little bit larger, and we had food trucks coming into our neighborhood. So our social committee actually developed a menu of food trucks that would come in to try to support those local restaurants. And those local restaurants never before necessarily had a food truck. So it went from a sense of obligation to patronize smaller business, locally owned businesses, to now it's a business opportunity that where are those gaps? And then from a banking perspective, the PPP loans, the payment protection program came out. And this did a few different things. Obviously, it was a lifeline to small businesses, but it also had banking and financial institutions as well as small businesses kind of evaluate their own business model, meaning that from a banking perspective, this was an exercise in launching a quick product to market in a very short timeline to help their business partners in the commercial lending space. This was a make or bust scenario. This was a very good exercise in, do we have the processes, the resources, the planning in place to be able to take a product from conception to market pretty quickly to meet the needs of our consumer? And do we understand the needs of our consumer? Do we understand our customer base to the level that when they need something, we can respond and we can customize and respond to that? So that's some really good lessons learned from both the small business perspective, but those that support the small business.
Well, Don, I mean, this is absolutely a fascinating read. I really appreciate you coming on the program this morning. Thanks so much for sharing your insight, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate your time, too. Hope you have a good day.
Thanks, Don. Great to see you. Thanks for sharing your perspective. And when we come back, we'll take a look back at some of our best segments for the week. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate co-pays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the Give Back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. On Monday, I sat down with Rise Up's founder, Tara Falcone about whether there should be ground rules for adult children returning home. Let's take a look.
Well, first of all, I want to say that there's no shame in moving back home if you've lost your job, if your financial
Great.
circumstances have changed. Your living expenses, rent, utilities, all of those things that you need just to keep a roof over your head make up the bulk of most people's budget. And so, if you have suffered any kind of financial hardship recently and moving home is an option for you, don't feel ashamed about it to get back on your financial feet. However, when it comes to family dynamics, as you've mentioned, there can be some question marks about, how long are you going to be staying here? Will you be contributing to any of the household bills? All of those kinds of things. So I absolutely think that there needs to be honesty and transparency and some ground rules in place, just so that everybody is on the same page with regard to the expectations of you, staying at home or living at home. If your, child is in a position where they can contribute to whether it's the mortgage or the rent or a utility bill or groceries or whatever, then absolutely, by all means, make them accountable to still be paying for some of their living expenses. However, if your child doesn't have an emergency fund, if they've just lost a lot of money, if they're not contributing for retirement yet, if they don't have those foundational principles for their financial life in place yet, then maybe you might want to, if you can afford it, you may want to view this as an opportunity to help your child get on their feet financially, and give them some leeway to maybe find another job, get a side hustle, start bringing in more income, and kind of beef up those savings before they go back out, into the quote unquote real world by themselves. But ultimately, that really depends on your child's situation. Money is one of the biggest sources of stress in many people's lives, and so this is absolutely impacting, many more people this year, specifically who have been furloughed or let go of, or have lost a source of income in some capacity. But really, it takes a lot, and it's a lot of initiative and kind of vulnerability and swallowing your pride to say, hey, I need help. And if your parents or someone in your family is somebody that you can go to ask for that help and to give you that space to kind of get back on your feet, that's really a gift. And you shouldn't be ashamed of asking for that. You shouldn't be embarrassed or depressed about it, but recognize it maybe as an opportunity for you to get kind of back in a better place than maybe you were even before any of this happened. My husband and I just moved to the West Coast, and we recently started using TaskRabbit for these little things that we need done that we just, when moving, you don't have the time to do. And so, if you're handy, if you like to run and get groceries, if you, love driving around, there's any sorts of types of things that you can apply to start to do on TaskRabbit and get paid for your time. There's a 1 hour minimum for most things. And so, you set your rate and people will hire you to do stuff for them. It's pretty great. And you can do it all on your own time. There's also, the ability to sell things now through many different apps, Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, whatever. I've made, I think it was over $1,000 just selling a ton of stuff that we had lying around that we didn't need anymore. So, if you're moving back home and you don't have space for all of your belongings anymore, one man's trash or whatever is another's treasure. And, you can make a little money that way too. Just realistically, I would say don't look a gift horse in the mouth. If somebody is supporting you and keeping a roof over your head right now while you're in a kind of a bad position, be grateful for that. If they have rules in their house or they expect certain things of you, try to be a little flexible there, but also figure out ways that maybe you can help them. I know, for example, whenever we go visit my in-laws, there's always some tech issue that my mother-in-law needs me to help her with, or, some newfangled thing that she can do on the TV or on her iPad and to make her life a little easier. So, they're helping you. Maybe there's some ways that you can help them and help relieve the tension as well, because you're both grateful for each other being there.
And on Thursday, I sat down with MillionAcres.com's Deidre Woolard to discuss converting retail sites to senior living centers. Let's take a look.
Well, I think we're seeing retail be repurposed for a variety of things. We're seeing it be fulfillment centers. We're seeing an increase in medical in some retail areas. And so senior living is also something that is being discussed. There's a lot of advantages to using a retail space for senior living because you really can also put doctor's offices and things like that in there. You could make a sort of a nice complex for people with plenty of room to walk around. And we've seen in other countries, some countries have used malls for memory care because you can essentially create an entire village for people. And so that's one thing that we've seen. The problem, though, is that we really have a glut still in senior housing, and there has been a real downturn in move-ins over the past year because of the pandemic. Well, and they also tend to be in places where it's already easy to get to. So you don't have to try to buy land somewhere that's maybe out of the way and, further away from hospitals and things like that. So these retail spaces are perfectly designed for that. I think that what we're probably going to see is it's going to be a slow track toward more senior housing, because obviously we do have a lot of inventory available. So banks are a little bit hesitant, but you also have this long tail trend of the aging of America. We're all getting older. The baby boomer generation is going to need a lot of senior housing. The problem, I think, has happened is that we thought that people would need senior housing at one age. It actually turns out that they're more interested when they're a little bit older. So this is a trend that's going to take a little longer than I think some analysts thought to really happen, but it is going to happen. Well, senior housing, it was down in the third quarter from about 85% down to 82%. So not a huge difference so far. But yeah, there is that glut, and there is that people are preferring, in many cases, to age in place, but that is something that really kind of only happens for so long. The other trend that we're seeing is the return of multi-generational living. So, before the sort of rise of the post-war nuclear family boom, you had a lot of multi-generational living. That is now back, and we're actually seeing some of the home builders build houses that have an in-law suite or something like that, and are designed for multi-generational living. Well, a lot of people are finding this to be a good solution. And the other thing that is part of this is you have what they call the great wealth transfer. So as people age, they're already thinking about how they're going to structure their wealth for their children. So sometimes what we're seeing is that the parents will buy the house with the children and then plan to live in one part. So there's really a lot of thinking about how to transfer wealth, how to buy real estate that can work for the family now and then work for the family in the future. Well, and the other factor here is remote work. So you mentioned people moving to California or New York. I can be with my parents or move back home or move them somewhere closer where we both agree on that I can also go to work. So there's really a lot of flexibility that we've seen this year. I mean, that's sort of, if there is any benefit to this pandemic, which is a weird thing to think about, but it has changed how people think about what matters to them most, how they want to make their work-life balance better, and how they want to take care of the people that matter most to them.
Well, certainly great segments. I want to thank all of our great contributors this week. And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Don't forget, we're back again tomorrow on BRN Sunday. I'll be joined by members of the media, academia, and financial services to analyze all the news this week. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.